Hivin and Vibin with Dr. Bibi.
We have with us today Lindsay Hack. Lindsay Hack is the owner of the Identity Hacker, an AI identity strategist and certified health and life coach. Now, she'll have to decide what she wants to speak about today. Lindsay, you have to really decide. I can ask you questions both ways.
Okay.
Lindsay helps creators, coaches, and entrepreneurs see and become their future selves through AI generated imagery and visualization. With over 20 years of experience in transformation and mindset work, Lindsay combines neuroscience, storytelling, and AI tools to turn abstract goals into tangible proof the brain can believe. Her workshops and mentorships teach writers how to use AI images to unlock creativity, deepen the storytelling, and embody the identity of the person behind their next big idea. Ooh, there's so much imagination and creativity in this session. I am just looking forward to it.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Lindsay, let's start with understanding what are the mantras of your life.
Oh, so many. That's a great question. So one of my main mantras of life is progression over perfection. So that can be in every area of your life where we get stuck in that perfection mode. We get stuck in analysis paralysis and we don't ever do the thing, whatever that thing is. And so one of the things that I always talk to my clients about, whether it's AI visualization, health, wealth, whatever it is, it's do it scared, do it messy, do it not perfect, but get it done because you can always work on what that looks like after the fact. But if you get stuck and you don't do anything, nothing ever happens. And so that perfection, we have a lot of it in our world. And so I really try to encourage people that it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to take a step forward to make some progression.
Action and the intention. I think
Action.
action and intention, that's what matters. What are the guiding principles as a coach?
Guiding principles. So there's a few, okay? So one of my big ones is don't stay stuck, right? We have lots of opportunity to learn and move forward, coming back to what you said about action. But a lot of people just stay stuck, deer in a headlights, not sure what to do next, right? So I always say don't stay stuck, ask questions. If you have a question, I guarantee multiple other people have a question. There's no dumb questions. There's no reason to not ask. If you stay stuck, you're in a situation where there's nothing that I can do to help you. Please open and give me an opportunity to help you move forward. The other one is take what you need and leave everything else. Okay. We live in a world of information overload, whether it's podcast information, YouTube, we have so much information going on and we can't do or know all the things. And AI is an incredibly great example right now because it is moving faster than the speed of light. Things are happening, moving, changing all the time. I work within AI imaging and video, so I stay very focused on what I'm trying to learn and use that and move on. Do I want to know more about different areas of AI? Of course I do. But if we don't find an area to stick with and move forward and leave everything else behind, we get stuck regularly. So find that area, find what works for you, what you enjoy, what you need to take, and leave everything else behind.
So that means translating it would mean that specialize in something or pick up that area where you have deep knowledge and stick to that area while you can do other things. But that is your area where you are coming forth with all your natural self and all your capabilities and abilities.
Yes, absolutely. And then all the other things are beautiful and we want to play with some of them. AI especially, I love it all. But if you are trying to do all the things, you'll probably not get much done at all.
So tell me, how and when did you choose AI to be that area for you?
All right. Well, this is a great question because AI has not been around for 25 years, which is what you said I've been doing transformations for. So I have been a health and life coach for 24 years. And with that, I've been doing image vision boards workshops for about 15 of those years. We started off in coffee shops, with a glue stick and paper, magazines, and we moved into virtual well before online ever really existed. And then we just kind of built from there with Pinterest and Canva and all of these beautiful tools we had. About a year ago, I started playing with AI images with my AI mentor, and he was just sharing how to do it. And I thought it was really cool. And I thought, why not? And I always say my dirty little secret that I didn't tell anybody about for a really long time was that I couldn't do any type of visualization myself. I have sat with coaches, I've taken programs. I have even sat with the Dalai Lama in India and talked about visualizing your future. And all I saw was darkness, black. It never gave me colors or images or anything. So I just thought I was broken, as you do when you don't know what's going on. And I just, smile and nodded when coaches would say, "What does your business look like?" Or "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" And just pretended like I knew what I was talking about. Now, I felt little like a fraud because here I am teaching people the value of visualization, the value of your future self, and yet I couldn't do it. So fast forward about 6 months, I started playing with my images, and it was time to get ready for my newest vision board workshop, which was actually for November of 2024. And I thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if I put these beautiful images that I've created into my vision board. So I was, climbing Machu Picchu, or I was on a TEDx stage, or I was writing the book I've always talked about writing. And all of a sudden, everything changed for me. I was able to see her. And once you see her, you can't unsee her. And I was like, this is what everybody's talking about. So, what I really wanted to do was bridge the gap between visualization and those of us who can't. And when I shared this story about 8 months ago, hundreds and hundreds of people reached out to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was alone. I, the same way, I can't visualize. And so I just wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I started teaching workshops. I started sharing it with people. I really wanted them to feel the way that I felt and step into that future self and become her and really embrace her right now, whether it's 6 months, 1 year, 10 years down the road. And as a health and fitness, coach, I always said the work that I do in the gym, in the kitchen, with my water and my, sleeping was always for my 80-year-old self, right? I wanted to be able to get off the toilet by myself, play with my kids, not be a burden to my grandkids, etc. And now I'm able to see that version of me because I have the images. And so I just knew it was where I needed to be. Because I'm so passionate about transformation anyways, I knew I needed to teach more people about this. So now I teach people how to create their own. I also hold their hand to show them how to do it, and or I do it for them depending on what it is they want. And I have seen massive transformations, more than I could ever imagine, with women especially stepping into their true power, becoming who they wanted to be, asking for the sale, calling up that person to ask to stand on stage. And I've just seen so many incredible things personally as well as professionally. So I need to share my message to as many people as I possibly can.
Okay, so can I just try something? I am absolutely visually very active. Anything that I do it by shutting my eyes and just visualizing what I'm doing. So without my eyes, if I were, if I didn't have sight, I think I would be 90% impaired because I just wouldn't be able to visualize anything. My entire memories works on visualization. I have like a video playing of my memories, of my childhood and sequences of it. And my siblings say, "How do you remember in so many details?" But that's how it is for me. So for me to understand really what your challenge is, I'm trying to do a kind of a real game here, to so if I'm trying to because I remember visual boarding was one of our training that I had when I was in a managerial role in my corporate experience, and visual boarding was one of the things that I was given and told, think of the future, and I went ballistic on it because I was doing everything possible and I was putting things, and we were given magazines and glue and all that stuff to get the work done. So If I were challenged, if I were in your place, what would it be like if I said that visualize yourself 10 years from now
Hmm.
and what you are, how would you be?
Right.
So
Yeah, it's a great
then,
question.
yeah, so then what exactly happens with a person who cannot visualize?
Yeah. So what tended to happen, I can tell you from my own experience and just from the stories I've listened to over the last kind of 6 to 9 months, is we went and looked at other people's dreams. And so, when it came to, and I'll give a great example, what does your house look like that you want to live in when I was 25 and I was doing these? What did my house look like? Because I couldn't visualize it, I went and looked at other people's dreams. So I would look in magazines and I'd say like, oh, that house looks nice, which from a neuroscience point of view is exactly what you would have done. You would have picked a house that looked really nice, cut it out and put it on your board. But the difference is you could visualize yourself in said house. What I was doing is I was visualizing the house and I could not see myself inside of it. So the downside with that, of course, is from a neuroscience perspective, is when we think about our RAS, which is the reticular activating system, which is, the bouncer in the brain that tells all the things, it didn't believe me. So no matter how many times I put a house on there, or no matter how many times I put a car on there, no matter how many times I put something, whatever it was, a travel, my brain was like, I don't believe you because I can't see that. And so there's only halfway. I mean, you said 90% visually, in terms of impairment. It is very much like that. So I would create and I would design my life based on somebody else's reality. And so when it comes down to actually going after that, it's really challenging to do that. Now, did I find workarounds? Absolutely. Was I able to, design my way, put my photo photoshopped into it, and I could feel it a little bit more for sure. But because vision boards especially are emotionally connected to us, right? We want to feel that connection. It really does take its toll on somebody like myself who cannot visualize. And so I was able to really get places, but I was looking for other people's places, not my own, And so when you talk about like your childhood and stuff, I could see things that happened in the past, like a movie, right? I could see it happening. But in the future, if you had asked me, what would your kids look like, or what could your life look like, I wouldn't be able to see that movie. It would be a black screen. And so from a neuroscience point of view, you can imagine that, the neurons that are trying to fire to help support this theory, or, the ideas of saying like what we think about comes true, it was really, really murky. And so when it's murky, you can't get to the same level. And since now I use the AI imaging to help with that from my own personal experience, forget my professional for a minute, I have seen massive changes. I have seen me do things I never thought I was going to do. I've seen myself get my butt out of the chair instead of, do the work. And, if I wanted to go to the gym, because I see my gym version of me now versus, what that person could look like. And a really good example of somebody who can maybe not see it, but not understand it truly, is if somebody was coming to me and they really wanted to lose weight. If you wanted to lose 100 pounds, for example, but you've never seen yourself 100 pounds lighter, it's really hard to go after that without truly seeing it, right? So no matter how many times I cut out, the beautiful body from the magazine and put it on my fridge to say, don't eat anything because this beautiful body is telling you not to, your brain still doesn't believe it. We don't chase pretty, we chase proof. And that proof is what happens when I put myself on the TEDx stage and I put myself crossing the finish line, medal around my neck. And now my brain's like, not only do I get it, but I already see it's happened and I'm ready to go after it. So it changes the game completely for the remainder of us who don't visualize, but also for those who do. We're now putting ourselves into our dreams versus like a magazine trying to find the house you might want or the car you might want. I can actually create it. I can create it based on a listing that you saw in the real estate board or a house you visited when you were a kid or whatever it may be. I can create it because the only limitation to AI is your imagination. So everything can be designed. If you want to skydive, off the Eiffel Tower, I can create that for you. So now we're taking it to a whole new level because you are physically inside of this image, which therefore for somebody who can visualize sees the beauty of it, and somebody who can't necessarily visualize now can bring in the neurons, bring in the RAS, and create the future you who you've always wanted to be.
So that's where the difference is. So explain it to me a little more in deep. You touched upon the neuroscience. Can you Give us a little more explanation as to how does neuroscience play a role in all this?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people think vision boards are woo-woo-y, right? They're like, oh, that's so woo-woo-y. But it's not. It's actually very based in neuroscience. And so if you imagine, so the RES, as I said, is a reticular activating system. And I want you to imagine it's like the bouncer in your brain, right? The idea is you can come in, you can't come in. We're hit with trillions of data points every single day. I mean, look around you right now. You might have a coffee that smells, you hear noises, there's lights, trillions of data points. And we can't take that all in. It's just impossible. So the RES is that bouncer that says, yep, you can come in, yep, you can't come in. There's four main things that the RES allows in. First one is your name. If you've ever been at an airport or in a grocery store and you hear your name and you're just like, whoa, what happened? It's because the RES is like, that's important. The second one is anything that might be dangerous or putting you at risk. So the idea is that you are, cautious, not going into that dark alley that you might, look at or whatever. So that's the other one. The third one is sexual advances. I mean, let's be honest, that's good for the human race. So that's important that we get access to that. And then the fourth one, which is way more important for this experience, is anything that the RAS thinks is important to you. Okay, so if you have something that you are really, really, really wanting to accomplish, we think a lot about it, we focus on those things, and the RES is like, oh, that must be important to you, so I'm going to show you more. A great example of this is if you've ever bought a car. Okay. I remember my husband and I bought a brand new car when we were first married, and I was so excited. It was this charcoal gray, 4Runner, a Toyota 4Runner. And we drove it off the lot, and instantly there was cars exactly the same color, the exact same car everywhere you went. They didn't magically appear. What happened was your RES was like, oh, it's important for her to see this car because it's important to her, right? It's the same idea. Is anything that we think is important, that's what the RES will let in. So if we know that we want to write a book, for example, and we have these ideas in our head, right? We all have limiting beliefs from whatever past. And it's like, who am I to write a book? Why would they care what I think about? Those limiting beliefs keep us stuck. What happens when you design an AI image of you standing at a book launch, at a bookstore, people coming in getting your autograph, is your brain is like, oh, there's the evidence I need to say, not only is it possible, but there it is, I can do it. So I have a client who's been talking about writing a book for 20 plus years, never wrote it, had tons of limiting beliefs. I created her an image almost exactly like what I said at a bookstore, at her book launch, her book in her hand. And I told her to sit down at her desk. Every time she was ready to write, 5, 10, 20, whatever minutes she wanted, pull up her image, look at said image, have a moment with an image, right? I call them the mini manifestation moments. Have that moment with that image and then start writing. And I'm happy to report about 8 months later now, she's on chapter 10, the most she's ever written in her entire life, because she's able to look at that image and say, I got this. Not, oh no, who am I? What am I? Right? Those type of things. And then the other one that's really important with that is it keeps it front of mind, motivation and accountability. And I'll give you an example from my life. Okay. I do trail running races. I go to the gym. I've created images for both of those, my gym bod, my beautiful cross the finish line moment. And I sit down at my desk some days where I have so much work to do. We've all been there. I don't want to go to the gym, whatever it may be. And up pops that image of mine. And it's like, get your butt off the chair and go to the gym. And of course, I look at that future me telling me to get my butt off the chair, and I go. Now, it's a motivation in your face moment that says, if you really want what you're saying you want, whatever it is, TEDx stage, whether it's a trail race, whether it's going traveling, getting more business for your client, in your clients, whatever it is, the images are helping you stay focused. They don't magically do it, but they help you stay focused. And then if you think about, Tiger Woods or Serena Williams or any of these high athletes, you'll see them actually talk through their entire game, their entire match before it even happens. Because that visualization that we do, that constant conversation between our neurons and our conversation, that is actually letting our brain know that not only is it possible, but it doesn't know the difference between saying it, seeing it, or doing it. And how great is that? It gives us an opportunity to then create anything that we want. And with those AI images, for somebody like myself who can't visualize, or even for somebody who can, we are creating a bigger, bolder, better future you, and then allowing you to become her right now, step into her. I've seen the empowerment it gives women who have always, been a little bit shy or maybe not too happy with how they look. They have now become this beautiful, bold woman who's then turned around and said, yeah, I'm going to ask for that raise, or yes, I'm going to ask for that price, or I'm going to call and ask about that speaking engagement, or I'm going to jump on the podcast because they believe it's possible because they've seen themselves already doing it. And that's the power of it.
Lovely. I can see a lot of potential, and I'm sure it's more than potential. You can actually see it happening. But a question arises in my head, and that is, can it also be used to impersonate another person? What are the
Mm.
ethics or the values behind the usage of this kind of AI imagery?
Yes, great question, and a very common one at that. And I never talk about AI imaging without talking about the ethics and morals. So the very first thing I always say to somebody is ask yourself what you believe. Okay. I personally and professionally don't believe that it's necessarily an AI conversation. I actually believe it's a human being conversation. And what do I mean by that? Take money as a tool, right? People use money in a terrible way. We all know that. And people use money in an incredible way, right? The tool, which is money, is still the same thing based on the human being. I believe AI is the same way. Are there going to be people who use it terribly? Deep fakes happen? Yes. Unfortunately, that is going to happen. And then are there going to be people who use it like myself with my clients and stuff that make it absolutely incredible? For sure. Now, I don't want people to be misled and to understand that this stuff hasn't been happening prior to AI, right? Photoshop, you get your hair done, your makeup done, you go for a photography shoot, and then I post that on my stories and I'm like, oh, look at me every single day. No, that's not me every single day. That's photoshopped and professionally done. So we have been doing this for years. And yes, there's still the slimy guy out there who, puts himself in a private jet with his Rolls Royce and his poodle or whatever it is and makes comment about making money every single day. That stuff's been happening as well for years online. So it's not just about the AI aspect of it, it's about the human being aspect of it. However, I do ask you to ask yourself where you sit there. So I told you about my AI bod, my beautiful gym bod and my cross my finish line body. They are on my vision board 100%. They're on my mini manifestation moments every single day. I would never use that image online and say, come join my fitness program, because that to me is not ethical. That to me does not serve my values in how I design my AI images, right? A lot of mine are future me can't wait to go to Greece. Future me is doing this. I make it very, very clear, but it also comes down to personal preference, right? If somebody uses an AI image and somebody's like, wow, your hair is gorgeous, they don't have to say, oh my gosh, but it's AI, just like I didn't have to say, well, that's how I always look after my photo shoot, right? It is really up to you. The other side of that is how it makes you feel. Okay, so my gym bod AI image motivates the crap out of me. I absolutely love it. I get up and I go to the gym. It's kind of like, when you have a pair of jeans from high school that sit in your closet to hope that it will make you feel better. But meanwhile, every time you look at it, you feel like crap because it's like, ugh, I've never got back to that. So I always say if the AI image makes you feel terrible about yourself, that's not a good use of your time with that visualization, with that future you. But if you find that it's a motivator, absolutely use it. So it comes right back down to you and how you feel that it will work. And then, as I said, that conversation is what are your morals? What are your ethics? And can you envision AI as part of that? And I won't tell anybody not to, right? If somebody comes at me and they say, AI images aren't real. I've had people tell me they're soulless. I've had people tell me that they go against all kinds of things, the craziest DMs you could imagine. And I'm okay with that as your opinion. But I have seen the power in thousands of people, women who have been able to do things they never thought they were possible. So I focus on the evidence of what is amazing with AI images, not necessarily what's terrible with them. And again, that's my morals, that's my ethics, and that's how I talk to people about them. But as I said, it becomes your question and your answer versus mine. I can't convince you. I will never try to, but I also know what I've seen and how amazing it has been for so many of my clients and so many people within my community.
So does policies help with AI imagery? Like you can use it, you can restrict the use of it. Like, you can use it, but you can use it for yourself. to motivate yourself and have your mini motivation, uh, you know,
Yeah,
sessions, that's
moments.
fine.
Yep.
But you cannot publicly display it or do something like that. Can it be, because I'm thinking from a long-term perspective of, say, there will be people who will be using it. And how
Hmm.
can we then safeguard, and also if once you know how to use, because there are cases where other people's faces are put in objectionable videos, and
Hmm.
it's used to blackmail people, and it's used for cyberbullying and things like that. These things are very common now, and they're
Yeah.
happening. So how, I mean, what should be the future steps so that we can avoid, because everyone, the value system of each individual is different, the
Hmm.
ethics of each individual is different. So what is it that can be done in the future, or is being done currently, to safeguard the positive use of AI in visual imagery?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a few answers to this one. So, the first one I would say is as we grow within AI, whether it's writing, stories, images, videos, we are desperately going to need human connection in real life, right? So whether that is actually going to a summit, whether that is like I do a lot of AI imaging and video, but I also show my true face. I come on podcasts, I do different things because I want people to know that you can be AI and you can also be real life. So that's the first thing. Definitely merging the two. And then I think too from a personality point of view, right? I am very authentic of who I am and what I say and how I do things. So if for me, and I work really hard at that, if for me something came up where there was an image of me doing something that might not be, to my personality or my person, most people are going to think twice about looking at it and believing that. Now, that is a part of the safeguard. The second part of that safeguard is the way that I create imaging and the way that I design what I would classify as your AI clone, for example. There are some safe keys in there. So you have, your username and your password, and then you have what's called a trigger word. And there's a few different ways that there's no access. And I say no, but let's be honest, there are breaches and things like that. It's kind of like if you post something on Facebook, it's not necessarily safe for everybody, but we try to, keep it safe. There's less ways for people to access that because of those safeguards in there. I believe they're going to get stronger as we move forward. I also know that AI is going to help us solve some of these more, you know, important questions like how do we safeguard? Now, if you've watched movies recently, if you've seen any of the news recently, there is definitely deep fakes going on all over. And that is something that it comes back to, as I said, human beings. But from a safeguarding perspective, it's just like I turn around to people and say, if you decide to put your children's photos online on Facebook or Instagram, that's your decision. And if you choose not to, that's also your decision. So the more we can decide what we want to do with our own photos, that's how we can also safeguard as well. So if you decide you're not going to post pictures of your newborn or you're not going to post pictures of yourself, then that's another safeguard that we have as well. I think as we grow and as AI moves faster than the speed of light at the moment, we are going to find there's more safeguards to be put into place because we are trying to make sure that we live in a pretty decent world. I think sometimes, not always, but you know what I mean. And so I do think that the good people who are really trying to make this truth versus those who are not, are going to really continue to push and ask for safeguards and have more keys and have more, guardrails to make sure that they don't go off. Now, is it perfect? No. Is it possible to take somebody's images and do things with it? Absolutely. But then that comes back to what I said about ethics and morals. As a human being, I would never do that. Hopefully, people won't do that. And that's kind of where I go with right now. And for me, I do believe there's more coming. Just like when we first started with, AI back a few years ago, that the changes that have occurred just from a safety perspective have already been put in place. I mean, Roblox is a game that's out there in the world. Originally, they knew nothing about it, so they just let everybody use it. Then they were like, oh, this needs to be a little bit more, you know, checked and propered and be careful and that kind of thing. And then they've put in way more strict rules because they've seen some of the negative things that are going on. So I think the evolution of AI is going to happen as the evolution of AI happens. And that is going to be a part of it as well. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not, but are we going to do the best we can to really engage real people doing real things with the AIs? Yes. And that again comes back to that morals and ethics.
So so I was recently having a conversation with a director of a company, and he was saying that he avoided putting his face, his DP on, LinkedIn. Now that's a professional network where you need to put your face up because people need to know you. That's one of the trust building factors. Is your face out there? Can people really see you, etc. So he doesn't do it. And one thing that I noticed, in fact, I was having a conversation even earlier this morning, and that was also about, whether we really need to put our DPs up there. And because after all, the person who's connecting with you wants to know you, wants to see you. So that is one thing. And secondly, when we are showing our face, we are actually also, in a way, showing how we are, as a person. So what is an answer that you would give to this director who is who is scared actually to put up his DP?
Yeah. I've come across it a few times in terms of just in general photos, whether they're AI photos or photos. I was working with a client who actually is very cautious online because of a lawsuit that's been going on and stalking and all of that kind of thing. So that obviously is one extreme. Not wanting to is another extreme. And I think, like you said, I really truly believe, especially now, which is why I truly believe doing some AI and some real life is going to change the way we do business. People aren't doing faceless as much as, I'm sure you've heard people are like, oh, faceless is so easy. People don't buy from faceless. They buy from faces. And so, in order to get to know somebody and get to like somebody and get to trust somebody, which of course is the golden rule of sales, I really truly believe you have to put yourself out there. Now, the good news is for somebody like him, if that's what his decision is, you don't have to be online, right? The online world is a very untrusting world. We need to see people. We like to know about where they live and what they do. And that's not to say like going through their closets, but we do really connect that way because it's the only way we know how to when you're in an online world space. When you're in an in-person space, he can walk into a room, shake the person's hand, introduce himself, and that is amazing. If that's the way he chooses to do things, then he's still going to have a fantastic business. He's just not going to have an online business the same way. And so when I work with my client who, as I said, is doing very much a no face version of herself, we have a character for her. So we have a character. We've changed her name. We've changed her face. She is an online persona. And now what she's doing, that's going to work fine for her. It will be perfect. But I also believe when it comes down to it, if anybody ever met her in real life and then put two and two together, they're very separate. So I don't think that will happen. They'll feel mistrust, right? So for me, like I said, I want to show who I am as honestly as I can in my AI imaging and videos. And then I'm going to show myself on podcasts and videos and stuff as well. So people can see that there are two of me. I talk about my AI persona and I talk about my Lindsay persona, which is me right here showing you who I am. For him, I think the best piece of advice would be, okay, that's amazing. But I think that in-person networking, in-person events, in-person shaking hands is going to do a lot more for him than online. Because I know personally, and this has nothing to do with professionally, if I'm on LinkedIn and they don't have a picture, I'm not accepting their requests. I'm not talking to them because I don't trust the non-pictured people, right? So we're in a situation where we almost have less trust for non-pictured people versus less trust for AI or images. So I think there are always going to be people, and I believe and trust however they want to do their business. But in an online world, I think you have to show your face one way or the other. And in my opinion, it's doing a little bit of AI because it's fun and it's cool, but it also showing your face as a human being, where that I can touch and move and be a part of it. And doing both of those is really going to build that trust factor.
Right. Because trust is very important in all businesses, all kinds of
Absolutely.
transactions, all kinds of in networking, all kinds of connections. That is the first vital how do I put it? It's like salt in a
Mm-hmm.
dish. You
Yes.
really want to have that trust in. So let me start by asking you this question on how did you become a coach? When did you decide coaching is for me?
Yeah, so interesting. So bringing it all the way back. So I went traveling after university for 4 years, lived the life of a traveler, came back to Canada, which is where I'm from originally. And my husband, who's from England, also came back to Canada. And he wasn't allowed to work because of visa situations. And so he started training and running and doing all those things. And after traveling, I had gained a ton of weight. I was really unhealthy. We drank, we smoked, we did all the things. And so originally it just started as me trying to get myself in shape. And then as I started doing those things and learning more things and trying to get more information, people started asking me questions. And I fell in love with answering them. I fell in love with the idea of supporting them. I went back to university for a Bachelor of Nutritional Sciences. I started working in a big box gym, and I just absolutely loved sharing my knowledge and experience to see people have their own transformations. And so, I'm not surprised. I love teaching. I love being a part of somebody's world when it comes to that aha moment. Holy smokes, I can't believe I did that. But it all started with what I was doing for me. And then it was like, I wonder why that's not working for you. Well, let's me go and dive a little bit deeper into this. And obviously, as I said, my background was in health and fitness. Then that moved into more life coaching because let's be honest, mindset is such a big part of everything that we do. And so I was learning and grabbing different areas of information. I actually moved to Australia when I had been in an industry for 6 years and I had to recertify all myself to be in Australia, and their personal training and nutrition programs, group exercise programs actually had life coaching. And it was my first moment. So when I was introduced to it in Australia, I did the Australian Fitness Network. And that was like the moment where I was like, oh, this is the missing piece. You can eat well and you can move well, but if you're not got the mindset, you can't see the results long term. And so it really became, how could I help somebody have that aha moment and realize that, yes, I can do this myself? And that's what I started really loving. And so now moving into the more of the AI stuff to get somebody to have that transformation by an image, to create this idea in them and see them transform. It just takes that coaching to another level because it's that moment where they believe in themselves, right? I will be your cheerleader for as long as you possibly need me to, but as soon as you believe in yourself, we're going to celebrate like crazy. And that is such a powerful thing as a coach for me. And so, yeah, so I continued to battle through, a lot of things. I mean, if you've been in a business for 24 years, I've had my own business for 17 of those. There's hard times, a lot of them. I moved online in 2016. We moved from Canada to Mexico. I mean, there was just all this life that happened, but everything that happens in that transformation moment keeps me there, keeps me a part of it, and wanting to help and support people more, and see how they can have their moment. Because when they believe in themselves, oh my gosh, it's magic, magic.
So you spoke about struggles, and my next question is about struggles. And also, what are the struggles that you have faced, one as a coach, and two as a person that has shaped you?
Okay, so let's start with as a person that shaped me, because I think this is an important one. So when I first started my business, it was when my first daughter was born, and I didn't want to go back to work. I mean, again, very normal story you hear a lot of people talk about. But at the time, my husband worked in a corporate environment that made a ton of money, and so I really didn't, quote unquote, have to make a lot of money. I got to learn, I got to play, I got to do a lot of those things. And then when we decided we were going to leave Canada behind and move to Mexico, I became the breadwinner of the family. And, my husband left corporate and he ended up joining my business. And the the change between a little bit of fun to, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay our rent, is a massive one, right? And so when you realize that there is a big change in not only personally, but how you run your business, where you're going to get your next client, that type of stuff, um, it's a lot, and it can get very heavy very quickly, and we live in Mexico currently, still 8 years later, and we don't have a plan B. This is it. My husband and I run our business online, and this is where it is. We can't just go and jump and grab a job at the local Starbucks or whatever. So from a personal point of view, it's a lot of heavy understanding and belief in yourself when gets tough, which we all know it happens, right? It's like somebody saying we want less stress, we want less, it doesn't happen that way. It's just different. It just changes. So that was a really big one for me as a person. As a coach, about 4 years ago, I had a client that I worked with, and she lost her job. And I was working with her as a life coach, and she lost her job and therefore was unable to continue paying for her services. So I had said to her, why don't we put a pause on the services? I will support you however I can. And when you get back on your feet, we can look at it again. Well, she took that as an abandonment issue. She took that as a rejection issue. And she went and tainted my name across the interwebs, basically, about how terrible of a coach I was, how terrible of a person I was, how I took her money, and just everything you can think of and more. And so I know from a coaching perspective that she wasn't doing that to me personally as an individual. She was doing that out of her fear, out of her sadness, all of those things. So I remained very silent. And it's very hard to not want to defend myself against somebody who's saying negative things. But I truly believe that because I stayed silent, people knew that I didn't have to defend myself because I wasn't doing any of those things. And then, of course, I have clients and friends and people coming to my rescue, making all these comments. And then I finally said to them, like, you need to stop as well, because this isn't about attacking one person to make me feel better. This is about sharing that as a coach, I am able to take not only the positive, and then, of course, what did I learn from that? What can I look at from my situation? And maybe I didn't, go about it the right way, knowing her background. Maybe I could have said it differently. And so, from a coaching perspective, I had to look at that and see how I could grow, be better, and then look at another situation. And so, when I had another situation where a client lost their job and, again, had to cancel, I went about it a very different way. And, we're still friends now. And she comes back every once in a while for a session here or there when she can afford it. But it was a very different outcome. So I definitely learned a ton from that. And I grew a ton from that, because it is hard to take when somebody is kind of taking after you when you didn't do anything wrong. But at the same time, I didn't want to go around bashing her as an individual or as a human being or anything like that. So staying silent also meant that I was able to look inward and see where I was working and what did I do that could do better and how could I do it moving forward.
Right. It's all about the decision you make and the response you give that matters and
Exactly.
changes the situations and how you face it. I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very
Mm-hmm.
difficult when you're facing a very strong negative, atmosphere. And how do you actually respond then becomes I think it changes the person in you. The way you respond, your response actually changes the person in you. And I think
Yeah,
it's for the better.
absolutely.
And I think it's
Yeah.
for the
And
better.
it is. And I often say to people, I'm a pretty easygoing person. Anyone who knows me, I'm a pretty half full kind of girl. Um, but that doesn't mean that I don't have the other side of me. And, I still have her. She's in there. I just don't like having her come out very often. And, it has happened once in a while, and not towards clients or anything. But I personally prefer to live in a world where, I take a breath. What is that going to accomplish? My energy is my most valuable currency, and I just don't think it's needed to be a part of that. And so I try to release it and let it go. It can be really hard sometimes, but at the same time, I know I'm a better person, a better coach, a better mother, a better spouse for it, for when I am less energy engaged in something negative than I am moving forward with just moving on with my life.
Yep, I understand that. So I can reciprocate absolutely with what you're saying.
Yeah.
How do you sustain yourself? Now, you've shared your experiences, your challenges. How do you sustain all this?
It's so interesting. I don't necessarily believe in this work-life balance. I actually believe in more of a circular motion, right? There are times when I'm working more and then I'm spending less time on myself or more time with my family and less time on my business. And I kind of, work it to there. I think the biggest thing for me is boundaries. And this is something that is not perfect still, even to this day, and in many years in the making. I put boundaries in place that then I am responsible for advocating for myself. So if I say I'm not going to check my email on the weekends and I check my email on the weekends, they're going to learn, they're being clients or people or whatever, that I can get away with sending her an email and she might respond to me. So I put those boundaries in place for whether it be I'm, on my phone, I'm with my family, I'm doing work things specifically. I also go into nature a lot. As I said, I do trail running. I hike every weekend. I spend a lot of time with my husband and my kids because our family unit is in Mexico. So we don't have family around us. So we spend a lot of time together. And I think, some days I get it wrong. I still do. Some days I'm like, oh my, did I even move today? You have those moments. And then I'm a big believer, body before business. I mean, obviously, my background is that I truly look after myself from a movement perspective, whether it's a walk, a hike, going to the gym. I eat well, I drink water, I try to sleep as best I can. Am I perfect? No. I told you my mantra originally, right? Progression over perfection. But if I look after myself, I am a better coach, I'm a better business owner, a better mother, a better, spouse, a better everything, a better person, a human being. And so I truly keep that as a priority for me as well, so that I'm able to give more to others, and be in a place where if I need to take a break, I take a break. I tend to take walks. I tend to have sun on my face. I live in Mexico, so it's a beautiful thing that you can get out and not be in the winter. So I do those things as priority, knowing full well that I will be better at all the other things as I move forward. As I said, am I perfect? No, I wish I was. I can talk the talk all I want, but I do as much as I can, and I try to do better every single day. And, that helps me keep sane. That helps me from burnout. Now, I've been there. I burnt out big time with my life, with my business. I mean, again, it's happened. I think every single person who's ever had a business has felt that moment. And then I look at what can I learn from that? What did I do? Is I forgot about myself. I forgot to look after my body. I forgot to look after my food. I gained a ton of weight. I got all sluggish. And so that for me was that really big moment where I was like, hold on a second. You say you have these boundaries. You say you have this under control, and then you basically are dying because you're not doing those things. And so we learn from it and we move on. For me, that was about 10 years ago. So I can say that it's well in my past and I've really worked on it now. But I think we all get there. And as long as, again, like every situation, we can look at it and say, what's my part in this? Well, in this part, it was all my part. So, of course, I've got to take responsibility for that. There's no excuses and blame or anything like that. And then what can I do to change it? And sometimes it's baby steps. It's not rejigging your entire world overnight, but taking some baby steps to work towards it. Go for a walk for 2 minutes if you need to, right? Get outside in the sun for 5 minutes and then build slowly onto that. And slowly it starts, coming back to more of a, as I said, body over business and family and all of those things. And then as I said, there's still times where I'm working 12-hour days and I just make sure that I look after myself in and amongst that time. And whether that could be just a quick, as I said, sun walk, something that's going to feed my soul so that I can get right back into what I'm doing. And I love what I do. So that really does help. I know a lot of people don't love what they do, whether it's a 9 to 5 or maybe their business is draining. I love it. And so for every time I have a moment where I'm just like, oh, I'm like, but you get to live in Mexico. You get to be with your kids. You get to work with women online. You get to have these beautiful transformations, and that kind of change of perspective is a really big belief for me because we can get bogged down, well, by life right now. Let's be honest, everything around the world is crazy, but I don't look there. I look at myself, what I can control and what I can focus on, and then I bring that forward. And the days that I'm feeling a little bit more overwhelmed or a little bit more, down in the dumps, I look at what am I not doing? And I realize pretty quickly what it is. And then I start doing that as soon as I can. And that can kind of help bring me back. But it's not about that perfection. It's about getting as much as you can done, and then what can you learn from that and move forward and try again and do it again.
Yeah, it's an iterative process that, got
Hmm.
to keep doing, keep doing. What is the legacy that you are carrying and you want to leave behind?
Such a good question. So I have two teenage daughters. They're 16 and almost 18. And so there's two really important legacies for me. When my daughter was 8, I remember reading a stat that said little girls at the age of 8 have the most confidence, and every day after that, it decreases. And that stat, it still gives me goosebumps, broke my heart. And so I believe that we as a culture, a society, women, mothers, aunts, siblings, whatever, we have a responsibility for our children to help them not feel like they have to go through that level of 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds. I mean, it's tough. So my legacy in that sense is to help support my children, obviously my two daughters, but women and girls all over to really understand that it starts with us, right? We have all these crazy norms in society, whether it's through TikTok or magazines back when I was a kid, right? We have all of this. So we have to teach them before they're taught by somebody else. And I think that's a big legacy for me, is the responsibility of our children. And I wrote a short story. I got published years ago about this short story. And for me, that's a huge one. So that's definitely one of them. The other one of that is my 18-year-old daughter is talking about going to university and what should she do and all of these things that happen at that age. And she's looked around at what my husband and I do, and obviously the life that we've lived and the location freedom that we have. And she decided to start her own business. Now, will it be what she does for the rest of her life? I don't know, but she's hustling right now. She's created her own website. She's doing photography because she loves it. And that's what I want. I want to be able to show, as obviously our children, but other young adults, that it doesn't have to be this cookie cutter, go to school for 4 years, go into a 9 to 5 that you hate, live life doomly for the weekend and your 2 weeks worth of vacation. I want to show people that it's possible, not only because we've done it every day for the last 9 years, but also because there's so many possibilities out there, especially with online. We've learned so many things. Then COVID hit, and all the jobs that told us they could never do online all of a sudden have opened doors to be able to do online. And so things are changing in our world. My daughter at this age is the first group of kids that could enter university and come out the other side in 4 years and not even have a job that exists anymore. So our world is changing, and we need to start changing with it. And that doesn't have to be entrepreneurship. That may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it has to be something that's showing you that as the world changes, you can change with it. And so that's a really big piece. So I'm working with a lot of young adults right now. I do a mentorship with some of them who says, how do you create livelihood online and location freedom, financial freedom, time freedom, all of those things. And I just really believe that we need to do better with the older generation, as in older kids. So 17, 18, 19, who are really trying to figure out what the heck to do with their lives when their lives are constantly changing with AI and with, online and all of these things that are going on. How can we help them and support them? And it's not just go to university, which is what I was told when I was a kid. You got to go to university. You got to get a good job. You got to start a family. All of those things are wonderful. But if that's not the path you want, I didn't know there was any other option, right? And that's a big part of what I do with my kids, with the kids here in the community. We live in central Mexico. There's a big expat community here. We have a lot of entrepreneur parents. So we're really trying to encourage the teenagers of the world to look at life differently than even somewhat the schools are telling them to do. And that's a hard one, because teachers, I love you, but the curriculum that's been based, especially in North America, I don't know exactly how it is over there, but in North America, it's still churning out workers in a factory that don't exist anymore. So that's kind of where I sit. So it's a lot of responsibility for our young kids and our young adults so that they can create it. And if that is my legacy that I leave behind, then I will be more than happy to leave it to all the young kids in the world to grow and become whoever they want to be.
I think it's amazing that you have thought of this, and the fact that you are, building something that should be for the. This is something that's there in my head too, but maybe sometime in the future. But yes, it is in my head too. Now that we are wrapping up, how would you like my listeners and audience to connect with you?
Yeah, it's great. So thank you. Any social media outlet, I'm on all of them. LinkedIn and Facebook are usually the ones I'm the most active in. You can also email me at lindsay@theidentityhacker.com. There is no stupid question. So I say this to people all the time. If you're listening and you're not quite sure what I'm talking about or whatever, I love connecting with people. So I get emails and DMs all the time that says, this might be stupid, or I don't want to waste your time. Never are you. I'm always open. I'm always interested in chatting. But yeah, I always say if you want to look at some of the imaging or videos that I do, Facebook and LinkedIn is great for that, Instagram as well. But definitely take a look, come and join, come say hello. I would love to connect with people. And yeah, I'm more than open to answering questions as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lindsay, for for your sharing your experiences, sharing your insights, and the most empowering thing that you have shared today is actually talking about what you're doing for your young daughters and also for young people, who are right now blooming and who should be shaped at this point. That's an amazing thing that you're up to. I am also very, very happy to have had you today, not just because of what you have shared as your experience or your knowledge, and those were amazing, but you as a person, you are amazing as a human being, as someone who has really gone ahead and shared what you believe in. So you're actually walking the talk, and that's an amazing thing to have. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for being here with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it. And I'm very passionate and get excited, but it's because I am so excited and passionate about what I talk about. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to share it.
Thank you. Lovely meeting you.
Yeah, you too.